economies in Asia.
Yeah.
But BRICS is something that has a global reach. And for Russia, for other economies within the BRICS grouping, this is their very own platform. It's not something that is coming from the advanced economies. This is the creation of the global South itself.
Yeah.
And it allows essentially to overcome the regional limitations for these economies and open up to forging alliances across the wide expanse of the global South. Which I think this economic potential of forging alliances within the global South is not really well explored and not used to its fullest degree so far.
Yeah. Thank you. So, and one question also arises here: will the BRICS ever grow up in this time?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Will the BRICS grow up in this time?
Will the BRICS? Sorry again.
Will the BRICS ever grow up in this time? In a real situation in the present world, grow up. That means the grow up. This is the benefit from the BRICS.
Yes. So in terms of the potential for expansion, I think it is a possibility. The big question is, what are the scenarios through which this expansion takes place? Is it through BRICS welcoming one or two economies from more than 10 that have applied? Or could be that BRICS decides to form a second wave grouping, so to say, and allow several years to see how the relations, the economic dialogue between the BRICS core and this new grouping that we may call peaks is proceeding, and possibly a decision then would be to kind of designate a certain group of countries that can become permanent participants in the BRICS Plus outreach that is held every year going forward. So depending on whether this format is successful, if the core economies of BRICS conduct successful regular meetings with this BRICS Plus grouping of countries that is meant to be the second wave, then perhaps potentially later on in several years we may have the adoption not of one or two countries, but a whole group of countries into either the BRICS core or the enlarged BRICS Plus circle, whereby these large economies, the second generation of BRICS, becomes a permanent component of the BRICS Plus process.
Thank you. Your valuable information. Then one question arises also here: what the potential, the expansion of the BRICS member Turkey and the others would mean for the Africa's countries?
Well, I think for Africa, there are tremendous possibilities to get more involved in developing economic relations with BRICS. And I think apart from the possibility that several more economies from Africa join either the BRICS Plus or the BRICS grouping itself, there's a way to try to make the African Union, virtually all of Africa, part of the BRICS Plus process. And the route to that I see is through a platform that I call BEAMS. A platform that brings together not individual countries, but the regional groups represented by the developing economies, represented by BRICS economies. So essentially, every BRICS country has its own regional grouping. If we're talking about Russia, this is the Eurasian Economic Union, just as we talked about just now. If we're talking about Brazil, this is Mercosur. If we're talking about China, this is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We're talking about India, this is BIMSTEC.
Yeah.
And then for Africa, for South Africa, this is the African Union. So one of the things that would be possible in terms of making this outreach of BRICS far greater, and for it to reach to a greater degree the African economies, would be to create this platform and to have the African Union as a crucial pillar of that kind of an expanded system.
Yeah.
This is, I think, that kind of format, the BEAMS format, is better than the admission of one or two economies into the core of BRICS, because with the BEAMS concept, you have dozens and dozens, probably a very significant part of the developing world, of the whole global south, starting to participate in the BRICS plus process through their participation in these regional groupings. So I see these possibilities as significant, and as near term, South Africa is presiding over BRICS in the course of this year. So if they decide to move ahead with that kind of platform that would allow the African Union to play a crucial role, then the African countries become far more important and far more active within the BRICS grouping. With Turkey, I think the admission of Turkey to the BRICS plus circle is something that is very much, I think, in the interests of BRICS countries. Clearly, Turkey is a very important part of the emerging markets of the region of the Middle East, and with its greater integration into various regional projects going forward, with Turkey becoming a more active participant of the BRICS Plus process of cooperation with organizations such as the SCO, there could be, I think, great potential for Turkey to make a greater contribution towards BRICS Plus. And that in turn, I think, would open some gateways, some possibilities for that expansion process to benefit other developing economies in the region and more broadly across the global south.
That is pretty interesting in this topic. So and next question is here among the above the here, in the present time, what obstacle and what limitation of the BRICS expansion in this time?
Well, the limitations are very much there, and one of the difficulties that I see with the expansion of BRICS, one by one, so to say, with the addition of several countries to the core, is that the larger the core of the BRICS, the greater the possibility of difficulties in arriving at consensus. So, as you know, BRICS operates on the basis of consensus, and if there are not 5 countries but 10 or 15, clearly it's going to be more difficult and more time-consuming probably to arrive at consensus on key issues, on key topics. We've already seen that some of the issues, such as the BRICS Plus format itself, have engendered certain difficulties in terms of arriving at agreements, consensus. So going forward, those types of agreements and decisions may be more difficult if the BRICS grouping is enlarged. This is the main difficulty that I see. And then, of course, I think another difficulty is that once you formulate certain criteria for expansion, you lose a certain degree of flexibility going forward. And also, another issue is that if you admit a certain portion of those countries that have applied, what is the format for the rest of the emerging markets that have applied to BRICS? What are they going to do? What is the format that is going to advance economic cooperation with these economies? So there are a lot of question marks, and quite frankly, my personal view that I expressed in my most recent article is precisely that it probably makes sense for BRICS to spend several years testing the BRICS Plus format, looking at how the economic relations between the BRICS core and the potential entrants evolve, how these economic relations evolve. And then I think one of the key priorities in the near term should be given not to the adoption of new members per se. This is something that can proceed in the next several years, but to look at new formats, at novel formats, innovative formats, such as a platform for regional cooperation agreements, integration agreements. This is something that I think has far more potential in terms of engaging a greater part of the global South into relations with BRICS.
So that is the pretty interesting thing discusses here. So last question about you, why the BRICS connection will play a crucial role global economics role in 2023?
Yes, I think the potential role of BRICS in 2023 will expand, will grow, and BRICS I do expect will be progressively on the agenda in the course of this year. I think one of the aspects clearly will be the expansion of BRICS. This is something that is going to be discussed in the course of this year very actively. Then another issue that will take center stage, I think, is the discussion of the potential of a new currency, a reserve currency that is to be created by the BRICS economies. Already representatives of BRICS declared that in the summit in South Africa this year, that is going to be held in August, the issue of the BRICS currency is to be discussed. The working name for the BRICS currency is R5, because all currencies of the BRICS economy start with the letter R, and already there are several articles that have been presented by the academic community about the possibilities and the benefits of creating this common currency for the BRICS economies. So there is a tremendous amount of possibilities that can be opened up by BRICS in terms of the new gateways for the development of the global economy. What is most important is that this year probably we will see that the BRICS will offer real alternatives, real possibilities for the global economy in terms of new reserve currencies, in terms of new formats of the economic cooperation amongst developing countries. I think that this year is going to be very important in terms of the impact that BRICS will have on global economic development.
That is a pretty interesting conversation, and we know that about the BRICS from you, and obviously your valuable information is the pillar role in our next generation, and know something about you and know something about the BRCs, and we discuss some special topic as you below the mention here. So last question arose in my mind, not is the include here in this topics or in my interview, just what happening in Russia and Ukraine war, and what the impact of the global market and how to improvement from there. It is from the suggestion of this audience or others for me.
Yes, well, clearly geopolitical risks, I think, have been to a significant degree underestimated in the previous years, and increasingly, I think, and going forward, we will see that global financial markets will be incorporating these issues and will be taking into account these risks to a greater degree. And I think more broadly, there's a set of global issues, not just geopolitics. That we can say this is pandemics, this is the energy crisis, this is global issues that have been underinvested, under-researched, underestimated globally by markets, by scholars, etc. And going forward, the global community will need to undertake far more investment into dealing with these long-term risks, whether this is, again, the energy shortages, food shortages, environmental issues. This is the new challenge, I think, for the global economy going forward. And accordingly, to solve these issues, you need new global governance. You need changes in terms of how the global economic architecture is structured, and BRICS will need to be an important part of that framework, of that reformed new framework. So I think one of the ways to deal with a lot of the issues is to go away to some degree from the country-to-country tensions, relations, etc. These have been problematic for decades and centuries, but to look at possibilities of different formats. And again, I'm here talking about the possibility of greater dialogue, of more platforms amongst regional groupings, not countries, but regions, and regional integration blocks and their regional development institutions. This is something that hasn't happened before. We don't have a platform currently for the interaction and the dialogue of regional organizations and their development institutions. So this is a new possibility that needs to be explored, and developing countries, African economies, they could make a tremendous contribution in that regard.
Obviously. That's a pretty interesting, good, and timing for your coming in this invitation. So I should respect for your giving the valuable time or valuable information and valuable guidance about in your view. So it should be benefited from others people. So thank you. You're attending here. It is a lots of pleasure for me because you respond immediately. It is a lots of pleasure for me. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and I wish all the best in your endeavors, and really hope that the BRICS agenda will move forward, because this is one of the most promising issues, I think, one of the most promising areas for this year.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.